What was the significance of Jesus being dead for 3 days?
The significance of Jesus being dead for 3 days what comes to mind is 1 Corinthians 15 again, when Paul says Jesus was raised from the dead on the third day according to the scriptures. So you do have this emphasis on a period of time in which he was dead and buried and then raised. And this three or third is there. One way to read this as an interpreter is to see Paul's words really emphasizing the resurrection according to the scriptures, and not necessarily a third day detail. But if you're like some scholars, such as Stephen Dempster and others, who have really wanted to include that detail that he was raised on the third day according to the scriptures, then we have this I think an invitation from the biblical author to ask, okay, in the Old Testament, why would a third day deliverance be significant? Is there a prophecy about a third day deliverance? And what we'll find, David, is from Genesis forward, this peculiar pattern begins to emerge of third day encounters or third day deliverances or something in 3 days happening of great significance. And to show you what I mean, it tells us in Genesis 22 that Abraham and Isaac are going to a mountain. And on the third day, they arrive at the mountain where Isaac is then delivered from sacrifice when an angel intervenes. You can notice different deliverances about the third day, or in 3 days, some kind of encounter happening in other parts of Genesis, like in the Joseph story, or in Exodus at the arrival of Mount Sinai in Exodus 19. Or passages like Esther, when she comes before the king in Esther, I believe it's in chapter 4 or 5. And then you have Jonah, the Jonah story, he's delivered after 3 days and nights in the fish. Hezekiah is delivered on the third day from being sick. I'm pointing out a few of these to say the third day emphasis begins to form a kind of expectation across the Old Testament that when a character has a major encounter of some sort, or when a character is delivered from some kind of peril, we are not surprised to find that the third day is mentioned in the context in some way. In other words, it's not as normal to find, well, on the fifth day somebody was delivered, or on the second day this major encounter happened. You have this expectation warming across the Old Testament of third day significance. So I think Dr. Dempster is right when he points out in an article he wrote for the Westminster Theological Journal that the third day deliverance, according to the scriptures, which 1 Corinthians 15 mentions, it has in mind not one Old Testament text only, though I think you could point to some, but rather a cluster, a matrix of texts that have formed a solid hope across. So Paul's understanding a pattern of deliverance and third day coinciding. And then when Jesus is raised, well, then of course it wouldn't be on the fourth day or the fifth day. Of course it would be the third day, according to the scriptures. That's the day that would make the most sense. I think those are the notions behind being dead for 3 days and being raised. That third day significance has a strong Old Testament background.